Ubisoft, once one of gaming's biggest powerhouses, is now facing legal battles, studio closures, layoffs, and a troubling series of business decisions. Fans are really angry, and I mean, well, who can blame them? And now developers are also speaking out against their former employers too. Even internal restructures are hinting at deeper problems at the heart of this company. It's kind of a mess, I know. But it's kind of interesting too when stuff like this happens, I gotta be honest. I feel like I'm a detective sifting through a crime scene or something. Except not as cool because, well, this is Ubisoft, and that place is ran by people who have done nothing but make that company worse, let's be honest. Anyway, today I'll be breaking down why Ubisoft is getting sued, why some say the studio has lost its way, which I agree, and why industry veterans are believing now that smaller, more agile teams might be the future of game development. It's a lot, I know, but let's get into it. Let's first start with Insider Gaming with this article titled "Former Assassin's Creed Boss is Suing Ubisoft for $1.3 million." So, the dude that's suing Ubisoft here is Mark Alexis Cote, or Cote, I don't know how to say it, whatever, but if you don't know who this guy is, he's been in charge of Assassin's Creed as a brand for a really long time now. He's helped shape the series, and was also the guy who infamously admitted that about half of the developers on Assassin's Creed Shadows had never made an Assassin's Creed game before, and as someone who reviewed Shadows for the channel extensively and played it and showed you all everything that was in it, yep, I can tell alright. That game was certified butt cheeks, I gotta be honest, with a side of, oh my god, why does this game exist the way that it is? That's pretty much how I would sum the game up, pretty much. But anyways, a generational fumble if I've ever seen one, okay? They ruined what could have been an amazing Japanese-centric Assassin's Creed game, because they wanted to be more progressive and do, well, nothing at all really in terms of interesting mechanics with it either. Anyways, we now have to time travel a bit to understand why Mark is suing his former employer for over $1 million. So, also from Insider Gaming, this time October 2025 is seen here, Ubisoft claimed that Mark left voluntarily from Ubisoft of his own free will. According to Mark, though, that was not the case at all. What really happened, according to Mark anyways, is that Ubisoft promised him a role at Vantage Studios, which, in case you don't know what that is, Vantage is the new mega studio that works on Assassin's Creed, Far Cry, and the Rainbow Six games. But you know the whole Ubisoft lost billions of dollars and tanked their worth so badly that Tencent had to come in and basically infuse them with cash so that they wouldn't die? Yeah, so Vantage Studios, that's the result of that last minute save. Anyways, like I was saying, Mark was offered a role at Vantage, but the role offered was not equal to what he was originally tasked with. Because like I said, originally, this guy ran Assassin's Creed for years. Now he would be like, I don't know, a manager or something. So Ubisoft pretty much was telling Mark you can either be demoted and have less power, or get out of here and move on with your life. So Mark was in a sense forced out, because Ubisoft's new partner in Tencent likely looked at Assassin's Creed Shadows and how they performed and went, yeah, that Mark guy, he's no longer going to be in charge anymore. Also, you have no say in this because we put a cash infusion of over $1 billion, by the way, into your dying company that is worth more than your entire company, by the way, so you have no say in this, by the way. And Ubisoft's leaders went, yes, Tencent, whatever you want, just please keep us fed in-house, we'll do whatever you ask, and thus Mark was kicked out into the cold. Wandering the streets, Mark was probably sad and neglected, and now he wants vengeance like he's Batman or something. As stated here in Mark's LinkedIn post via Insider Gaming, he confirms that, yeah, it wasn't his choice. He got kicked out, and now he has this lawsuit. So Mark is taking Ubisoft to court for $1.3 million in what he calls moral damages and severance pay. The origin of this report is from CBCRadioCanada.ca, which makes sense since Mark is from Quebec. So yeah, anyways, as seen here from the CBC, the reason why Mark is suing Ubisoft is because he claims that he's a victim of constructive dismissal. What does that mean, I hear you say? Well, according to Google, constructive dismissal happens when an employer makes significant unilateral changes to an employee's job or work environment, creating intolerable conditions that force the employee to resign even though they weren't directly fired. I'm literally reading verbatim the exact quote of this from Google, so there you go, now you all know what that means. So they, as in Ubisoft, made the company do sweeping changes, which Mark had no say in despite running Assassin's Creed for so long, and now he is pissed because now he lost his lucrative position. It also turns out we know the exact job that Marky Boy was being offered to, as seen here. Mark was offered head of production, but his original job title, head of franchise, was not offered to him at Vantage Studios. Instead, Ubisoft was looking for someone else to fulfill Mark's original role instead, so he would then, yes, be demoted and have to also answer to someone else, which, is an ego hit, especially when you've been the boss for like 20 years or something. Let me read you exactly what was said because, it's a bit spicy, but here it is. The lawsuit states that in September, the position to lead a creative house with abstract outlines was offered. After lengthy negotiations, Ubisoft reportedly asked him, Mark, to make a decision on the changes, to which Mark formally demanded that the company pay him severance. In response, Ubisoft reportedly told Mark not to show up for work as planned on October 13th and to continue his reflection period until the company responds to its formal notice. The next day, Ubisoft announced via a press release and internal emails that Mark was leaving his position voluntarily to explore new opportunities. Oh boy, so there you go. So Ubisoft pretty much fired Mark without really telling him first because they weren't willing to give him his due payments and such. Well, that is not good for Ubisoft, For Mark, probably pretty good. Hey, $1.3 million, that's nothing to sneeze at. But as you can see from this, Mark is rightfully livid because they screwed him over. However, on the flip side, I gotta play devil's advocate here because it's very clear that Shadows was so bad it didn't perform well. And when you combine that with how Ubisoft was basically falling apart at the seam for years, let's be real, while Mark worked there as head of franchise, that Ubisoft was very obviously seeing that things needed to change in order to survive. Assassin's Creed had become static, formulaic, and was again for the 80th time now chasing trends instead of the ones making them. So I can see where both sides are coming from here, but it's very obvious as well, at least from what's presented, that Ubisoft was in the wrong in how they went about all of this. However, either way, this won't end with Mark returning, I would probably guess. Too much bad blood, but also because Tencent, who now pretty much owns everything Vantage and Ubisoft related, clearly wants to revitalize Assassin's Creed and the other franchises, and who can blame them? Because Ubisoft has been on a generational fumble lately, so it only makes sense to do that, I would agree. It doesn't even end here. They're also getting sued by that Mark guy, but Ubisoft's troubles, they just keep continuing, so let's keep going. As seen here from City News, the Canadian Union is also filing complaints against Ubisoft after they closed down a production studio in Halifax, Nova Scotia. The reason why this is happening is because the 71 workers at this Halifax studio were trying to unionize in order to protect themselves from Ubisoft's scumbag behavior, and the devs at this studio were working apparently on some sort of mobile spin-off of Assassin's Creed. I don't think it's been announced yet, I could be wrong. But anyways, the Canadian branch of the Communications Workers of America, or CWA for short, were ready to represent about 61 of those 71 workers for this union thing. Ubisoft claimed the reason why they decided to shut down the studio had nothing to do with the fact that these workers were unionizing in the first place. I don't believe them, you probably don't either, but instead it was because they were losing revenue and needed to cut back in order to save money. But those workers were laid off on January 7th, 2026, and it happened out of nowhere, by the way, too. This is what the CWA president said about Ubisoft just removing Canadian jobs out of nowhere. Ubisoft took $12 million in taxpayer money from the government of Nova Scotia to nurture a generation of talent. And to build a tech industry, now it's walking away without so much as an apology. That's valid. They were all in on making this new tech hub or something, and then suddenly, as soon as Tencent gains power, I guess not anymore. Sorry, you can't do that. As they further stated here, it's against the law to stop workers from joining a union in Canada, but the slap on the wrist employers often get is not enough to stop this. The penalty should reflect the reality of intentional corporate bullying. Wild that Ubisoft lately is just doing things without realizing the repercussions, They should know better that they can't just do this to game developers, yet they just think they can get away with it anyways. The CWA is now trying to force Ubisoft through their own lawsuit that Ubisoft needs to either rehire everyone they just fired for at least one whole year until those workers can find other work. Or the other option given to Ubisoft is they have to pay all 71 of those employees the equivalent of 3 full years worth of pay and severance to make up for the sudden cancellation of the studio, their contracts, like everything, dude. I guess I assume that the money promised to these workers to develop Ubisoft's mobile game spin-offs is probably what those 3 years were for. So what Ubisoft maybe thought they could do is close it all down, pay nobody nothing, and then run away scot-free, I guess. It's actual scumbag behavior, can we agree? Seriously, I don't even see much of anyone online talking about this either, and we can't just let companies strong-arm their way around people like this as if they're nothing. But this all coincides with the other comedy of errors that are surrounding Ubisoft too. Remember The Crew, that racing game that Ubisoft sold to millions of players and then decided one day, we're shutting it down. Also, you owe nothing, and all the money you spent on it, we're keeping it because we don't care about you. That is still the most visible legal battle that, Ubisoft is is currently facing still, and it's crazy because The Crew was released in 2014. In early 2024, Ubisoft shut down that game's servers, rendering it completely unplayable because it lacked an offline mode. That sparked a lawsuit that got filed in California, where two gamers then argued that Ubisoft misled players, which I mean they did, into thinking that they bought a game that they could, own and play forever. Oh my god, the audacity. Imagine buying something and wanting to play it later on. But as seen here, this whole nonsense started in 2024, and it's still ongoing, by the way. But this is what I mean. What kind of faith are you putting into your company from a consumer perspective when you keep making every wrong decision imaginable that just ruins the integrity of not only your franchises, but the player satisfaction and the loyalty in the products that you make too? Why buy anything they make if tomorrow it can be revoked and now you're screwed out of money and the game you want to play too? As Ubisoft said here and pushed back, insisting that buyers do not actually own the games they buy from Ubisoft, they are instead only licensing limited access instead. Like, this is the central whataboutism to their defense in trying to dismiss this other huge lawsuit that they're getting sued for too, by the way. Ubisoft is arguing that the packaging clearly labels the game as a license rather than a perpetual purchase, which is stupid. But critics and users, the people who buy these games and keep them alive instead, they're seeing this as a PR misstep, and I agree. And it's also a reminder that the digital game ownership debate, it's not going away anytime soon because it sucks big loads, dude. The whole idea, like, it can even happen in the first place is so stupid. Like, did you guys also know that Anthem is dead now too officially? You can't play that game anymore at all. So now everyone who bought Anthem or has it physically or something, like, they're just screwed pretty much. The game is just like non-existent. It's so dumb. And many players, rightfully so, are arguing that once you pay something for full price, the company shouldn't be able to make it completely inaccessible. And yes, I agree. This feeling has helped fuel not just this lawsuit, but like the wider discussion about consumer rights in this digital world that we all live in. Because let's be real, guys, it's kind of stupid. Eventually, you're just going to own nothing, but you'll be paying through the nose for it either way. And then if you offend someone online, oh no, they'll just report you, and then surprise, your entire game library is locked and gone away now. It's ridiculous. But generally speaking, if we look at Ubisoft's track record these past few years alone, several titles have underperformed both critically and commercially. Their high-profile franchises are just not delivering like they used to either. X-Defiant, for example, which was meant to be a Call of Duty killer, gee, how many times have we heard that one before? Just ended up not doing anything it promised but passing away itself, because now you also can't play that game either. And during all of this, the industry as a whole is, evolving. Players increasingly are demanding meaningful experiences and, solid post-launch support. How dare they want games that work and, are priced accordingly? Like the good old days when companies like Ubisoft weren't complete scumbags? I remember those days. They were great. But Ubisoft's continued reliance on the whole games as a service model and big AAA budgets, they're not aligning with what players and developers even want anymore too. To prove my point recently, as Eurogamer reported here, former Assassin's Creed director says the future of game design lies in smaller teams. So, the developer in question here is Alexander Amasio. I have no idea if I said that right, but anyways, he worked on games like Assassin's Creed Unity and Revelations. Alexander admits in his interview with GameIndustry.biz, which they're referencing here, that, as he says here, that smaller teams are objectively the better move now, and he also admits that big budget developers cannot solve a problem by simply throwing people at it. Here's more of what Alexander said about this in his interview. There's this theory that says that whenever humans create something that surpasses 100 people, it completely changes the dynamic of it. As soon as you surpass that, the ratio of management to people working on the game explodes. You start having a very management-heavy structure. You need to have people to coordinate the people coordinating, he then continues. Something that a lot of AAA studios mistakenly do, or certainly did in the past, is think that you can solve a problem by throwing people at it. But adding people to a problem stagnates the people that were already being efficient on it. It just creates a lot of variable noise. And because of this, Alexander, who again worked at Ubisoft, believes that the best games being made either now or in the future will be coming from smaller development teams, and not the, big AAA game development. And I agree with them. It's the classic phrase, right? Too many cooks in the kitchen. No, you don't need 50 cooks on the line cooking at the same time. It's just impossible to manage. Plus, nobody can move if that even happened. And then you have certain people, that are specialized for certain workstations, and it works better that way. In 2025 alone as well, we saw a huge shift as seen here, that indies made up 25% of all the revenue on Steam alone. That's hundreds of millions of dollars in sales from games made by really small groups of people. Like, wow, imagine that. Hollow Knight Silksong is not great because they could have had a 200 dev team working on it. Instead, it was like 3 specialized people plus some extra help. Regardless, the quality of that that game isn't dictated by its size. And yet, that's how Ubisoft has worked for years. They used to employ developers in the literal thousands. Did you know that Ubisoft used to have over 20,000 employees in 2023? And by 2025, that's down to 17,000, which is still, again, that's an insane number of people to manage, dude. All those developers, and they released barely any games in recent years of note that have been nominated or anything else. Like, what gives now? How do you have enough workers to populate your own city? Well, like, one guy made Megabonk, and then like another dude went and made Schedule 1. You know what I mean? It's not the size, but how you use it. Or at least that's what I tell myself in the mirror every night before I go to sleep. But anyways, Alexander believes that the games industry could take a page out of the films industry instead. What he means is that in film these days, most crews are smaller and more specialized too. The same people work together on multiple films because they gel well. It's also why you see movies from the same director starring the same actors too. Ever wonder why every Ryan Coogler film has Michael B. Jordan in it? Or why Christopher Nolan likes to use the same actors again and again? Why every single movie from the guy that made like Nosferatu and stuff has the same people too all the time? Like, yeah, this is why it keeps happening. It's because they find people they work well with and then they just continue to keep doing it. The games are like that to a degree too. But the teams there are so huge, and let's be real, usually international too, especially in Ubisoft's case, there's just no cohesion there at all. Ain't no way that thousands of developers working on an Assassin's Creed game or Rainbow Six or whatever are going to be buddy-buddy, or even logically know who everyone else is that works on the project. They're making these things in a vacuum. They're sending their work up a supply chain of managers who then answer to other managers. There's no way of knowing anyone elsewhere because there's just too many people, dude. Like, think of your real life, okay? How many real friends do you have? If somebody out there says, oh, I have hundreds of friends, come on, be real. How the hell are you supposed to keep up with 100 plus people reasonably, know their lives inside and out, and make the time to hang out with all of them equally? You're either lying or you're like super rich and somehow find the time either way. But for us normal people, it's not a reality. I barely remember what I gotta do tomorrow. You know how often I gotta ask my girlfriend, like, what the hell is even happening every other day? What do you mean we're going out tonight? Oh, you told me that last week? I don't remember anything, honestly, besides like what game I'm playing at any given time, or what I want to talk about in a video next, if I gotta be honest with you guys. But like, this is what I mean, okay? Alexander is right. Smaller specialized teams, they are the future, as Alexander would say further here. Since its inception, I think that the gaming industry has treated itself as being part of the software industry. But it is kind of a weird hybrid. I think the future lies in taking that learning from the film industry, where you have core teams that are complemented with either outsourcing or with co-developers for specific needs. You get the right crew for the right project at the right time. Yeah, exactly. Expedition 33, which was spearheaded by ex-Ubisoft devs, wasn't great because it had 1 million people working on it at the same time. It was great because it was a small team that was passionate and knew what they were doing. I would love an Assassin's Creed game that made me feel something again. But likely whatever they do next, it'll be 1 billion miles wide with tacked on RPG mechanics and probably somebody asking me for my pronouns. Like, the cost cutting doesn't even end there. Look at this from GameIndustry.biz. Ubisoft cut another 55 jobs at Massive and Ubisoft Stockholm recently too. Massive, in case you don't know, they worked on Star Wars Outlaws and the Division franchise, by the way. Ubisoft also lost the series boss on the Division, whose name is Julian Gerreity. Hopefully I said that right, but as PC Gamer reported here as well, Julian left recently for Battlefield Studios. What was funny though was Julian literally was caught recently before this saying how, oh, the Division 3 is going to be amazing. It's going to be the best game ever made. And then like a few days later after saying that, Julian is like, I hate the Division. Battlefield all the way, baby. Like, what's Division? Never heard of it. I'm on that Battlefield generation run now, I guess. But yeah, I'm about as confused as you are here, but it's not surprising that Ubisoft is, well, bleeding their talent like crazy these days. Because as I've presented with everything in this video already, Ubisoft is getting sued for being deceptive. They're trying to remove unions. They're also getting sued for saying, y'all don't know nothing, shut up and just give us more money pretty much. And now their developers with this institutional knowledge are like jumping out of the windows and parachuting to the competition in record time now. Like, what's going on here? Although it is weird how Massive a few months ago, as seen here, was like, no. Julian is definitely staying at Massive, guys. Trust us. And Julian is now like, yeah, that's a lie. See you later. Well, okay, then that's totally not weird at all. But as you can see from everything I showed, Ubisoft's everything is in a really weird transitional period right now. The Crew lawsuit case thing could set a precedent for how digital games are sold and owned in the future, and God, I hope so, because it's really stupid. And if those players succeed in their claims against Ubisoft, companies may have to rethink how they shut down servers and communicate ownership rights, which would be really nice. Meanwhile, restructuring and layoffs indicate that Ubisoft Ubisoft is reassessing its entire content approach. Hopefully, maybe. I hope so anyways. But without like a real clear new direction, it still risks losing even more talent. The consumer trust is kind of not there, let's be real. And their market relevance right now is not the best, which is, well, not good. But Ubisoft's story right now isn't just about like the one lawsuit. It's about this tension between like the big corporate game development and what these players expect and they do deserve. We deserve stuff like ownership clarity, sustainable support to these games, and meaningful experiences that are actually worth your hard-earned money. So, will Ubisoft adapt? Can a 17,000 employee giant pivot toward innovation and stronger community trust in the future? Or will the industry continue shifting towards smaller teams and nimble development, which could be leaving traditional AAA in the dust as we know it? I kind of hope so, I'm not gonna lie. But there's a lot of things to consider here, but it's interesting nonetheless. Hopefully, with all of this going on and Ubisoft likely getting sued on multiple fronts, their next big idea for Assassin's Creed isn't yet another put a chick in it and make her lame narrative like they've been doing for a while now. It's honestly time to bring these franchises back to their core roots. I already know that Assassin's Creed 1 is getting remade at some point based on what I was told by people who work there already. But man, they gotta make sure whatever the next mainline Assassin's Creed game is, they really nail it, because God hope they need a win now, dude, really badly. Otherwise, this cycle of destruction is just gonna continue and get worse, but what do you think? Let me know as always in the comments. Thanks for watching, subscribe, and I guess I'll end with this question. Do you trust Ubisoft honestly, and if so, why? Okay, I'm done. Goodbye.